I was wiping down tables at Romano's when this woman in diamonds snapped her fingers at me like I was dirt. She had no idea her husband was watching from across the room. And honey, what happened next? That's a story about karma you'll never forget. Before we dive into this wild story, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell because I've got more real-life karma stories that'll blow your mind. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when entitled people get exactly what they deserve. Now, let me tell you about the day everything changed at Romano's. My name is Nicole, and 3 years ago, I was just trying to survive. I'm a single mum to my beautiful 6-year-old daughter, Brianna, and back then, I was working double shifts at Romano's, this upscale restaurant downtown. You know the type of place: white tablecloths, fancy wine lists, customers who spend more on one meal than I made in a week. But it paid the bills. Barely. I was always one emergency away from losing everything, but I smiled through every shift, because that's what you do when you've got a little girl depending on you. Romano's was the kind of restaurant where rich people went to see and be seen. I'd serve tables full of business executives, socialites, people dripping in designer everything. Most of them didn't even look at me. To them, I was just part of the furniture. But I kept my head down and did my job because I had dreams bigger than that place. I wanted to open my own catering business someday. I'd lie awake at night planning menus, imagining my own kitchen, my own clients. But dreams don't pay rent, so I kept serving tables and hoping for a break that seemed like it would never come. There was this one regular customer, though, this man named Christopher. He'd been coming in for months, always alone, always polite. He was different from the others. He'd actually look me in the eye when he ordered. He'd ask how my day was going and actually wait for the answer. He remembered my name, remembered that I had a daughter. He tipped well, but more than that, he tipped respectfully. You know what I mean? Not like he was showing off, but like he genuinely appreciated the work. In a sea of people who treated me like I was invisible, Christopher made me feel human. I had no idea who he really was. He dressed nice but not flashy, drove a regular car, never made a fuss. Just a kind man who seemed to carry some kind of sadness in his eyes. Then one Thursday evening, everything changed. I was working the dinner shift, my feet already aching, when Christopher walked in. But this time, he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop when she entered. She was stunning in that cold, sharp way. Designer dress, diamonds on her wrists and neck, hair styled to perfection. But her face, it was hard, mean. She walked through Romano's like she owned not just the restaurant, but everyone in it. My manager seated them in my section, and I grabbed my notepad, took a deep breath, and walked over with my best customer service smile. Christopher looked up at me, and I saw something in his expression. Discomfort, maybe even dread. He gave me this apologetic little smile and said hello. The woman, his wife, I quickly realized, didn't even glance at me. She was looking at her phone, one perfectly manicured hand waving dismissively in my direction, like I was a fly buzzing around her head. I introduced myself, started to tell them about the specials, and she cut me off mid-sentence. Water, room temperature, not cold, not warm. Do you understand? No, please, no thank you, no eye contact. Just that sharp, condescending tone that made my stomach tighten. I nodded, said of course, and went to get their water. My hands were already shaking a little. I'd dealt with rude customers before. It came with the territory, but something about this woman felt different, dangerous almost. When I brought the water back, she took one sip and pushed the glass away. "This is too cold. I specifically said room temperature. Are you incapable of following simple instructions?" Christopher opened his mouth to say something, but she shot him a look that could freeze fire, and he closed it again. I apologized, took the glass, brought back another. This time she didn't even try it, just looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe and said, "We'll order in a few minutes." "You can go now." I walked away feeling about 2 inches tall. I could hear her talking to Christopher in that harsh whisper that's somehow louder than shouting. I caught bits and pieces. Something about him embarrassing her, about standards, about how he never takes her anywhere nice anymore. My heart broke a little for him because he just sat there taking it, looking smaller and smaller. Over the next hour, she sent back the bread because it wasn't warm enough, complained that her salad had too much dressing, snapped her fingers at me when she needed something. Actual finger snapping, like I was a dog. And every time Christopher tried to be kind to me, tried to apologize with his eyes or mouth a sorry, she'd get worse. It was like she was punishing him by humiliating me. The other servers were starting to notice. My friend Angela caught my eye from across the room and mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded, but I wasn't. My chest was tight, my eyes were burning with tears I couldn't let fall. I kept thinking about Brianna, about her daycare bill that was due, about the fact that I couldn't afford to lose this job no matter how badly this woman treated me, so I smiled and took it. I smiled and said, "Yes, Ma'am," and "Right away, Ma'am," while she talked to me like I was nothing. Then came the moment that broke me. I was bringing over their entrees, being extra careful because my hands were shaking from stress and exhaustion. I set Christopher's plate down first. He thanked me quietly, and then reached across to place hers. As I did, she picked up her wineglass and just let it tip. The red wine splashed all over my white uniform, down my legs, onto my shoes. The table went silent. I stood there in shock, wine dripping off me, and she looked up with this little smile playing on her lips. "Oh my," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "How clumsy of you. Maybe if you were more careful, you wouldn't be serving tables for a living." The words hit me harder than the wine. The restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners were staring, some looking sympathetic, others just uncomfortable. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of her. I apologized. Can you believe that? I apologized to her and rushed to the back to clean up. In the bathroom, I finally let myself cry. 3 years of being treated like I was less than. 3 years of swallowing my pride to keep a roof over my daughter's head. And for what? To be humiliated by some woman who'd never had to struggle a day in her life? Angela helped me clean up as best I could, but the stain wouldn't come out. My manager, Mr. Henderson, found me, and his face was grim. "Nicole, I need you back out there. Table 12 requested you specifically." My heart sank. Of course she did. She wasn't done yet. I walked back out there, my stained uniform announcing my humiliation to everyone, and approached their table. Christopher looked like he wanted to crawl under it. His wife looked triumphant. "We'd like dessert," she announced loudly. "That is, if you can manage to bring it without destroying anything." A few people at nearby tables looked away, embarrassed for me. I nodded, wrote down their order, my hand shaking so badly I could barely read my own writing. But before I could walk away, she called out, "Actually, I'd like to speak to your manager. I think he should know about the quality of service we've received tonight." My blood went cold. I couldn't lose this job. I couldn't. Mr. Henderson came over, his professional smile firmly in place, and she launched into a completely fabricated story about how I'd been rude, inattentive, and unprofessional from the moment they arrived. She was a good liar, I'll give her that. She made it sound believable, even threw in some tears for effect. Mr. Henderson's face got more and more serious, and I felt my whole world crumbling. 3 years of perfect service, of never calling in sick, of covering shifts for other people. None of it mattered. It was her word against mine, and people like her always won against people like me. Then Christopher stood up. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. He just slowly pushed back his chair and stood, and something about the movement made everyone go quiet. When he spoke, his voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the entire restaurant. "That's not what happened, and you know it." His wife's eyes went wide. "Christopher, sit down." But he didn't sit down. He looked at Mr. Henderson and said, "My wife has been verbally abusing this waitress all evening." She deliberately spilled wine on her. She's been condescending, cruel, and dishonest, and I'm done watching it. The restaurant was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. His wife, I later learned her name was Veronica, tried to grab his arm, but he pulled away. I've watched you treat people like they're beneath you for 10 years. Service workers, assistants, anyone you think can't fight back. I've made excuses, looked the other way, told myself you'd change, but you won't. And I can't be married to someone who has so little humanity. Veronica's face went from pale to red. She stood up, her voice rising. How dare you embarrass me like this? Do you know who I am, who we are? And then Christopher said something that changed everything. He turned to Mr. Henderson and said, "Tom, I'm sorry you had to witness this. I know I've been coming here incognito, but I think it's time everyone knew the truth." He looked around the restaurant and then back at me. "Nicole, I own Romano's. I own all 25 Romano's locations across the state. I've been visiting my restaurants without anyone knowing because I wanted to see how my staff really gets treated, how they really work when they think the boss isn't watching. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Christopher, kind, quiet Christopher, who I'd served hundreds of times, owned the entire company. Veronica looked like she'd been slapped. Mr. Henderson's mouth literally fell open. Christopher continued, his voice steady and calm. "Nicole, you've been nothing but professional, kind and hardworking every single time I've come here. You've treated every customer with respect, even the ones who didn't deserve it, especially the ones who didn't deserve it." He turned to Mr. Henderson. "She keeps her job. And I want her promoted. Give her a raise, effective immediately." Then he looked at his wife with eyes that were sad but resolved. "Veronica, we're done. I'll have my lawyer contact you tomorrow. This marriage is over. It's been over for a long time, but I kept hoping you'd find some compassion, some kindness. Tonight proved you never will." Veronica tried to argue, tried to apologize, suddenly all tears and remorse, but Christopher was already walking away. He nodded to the security staff by the door, and they escorted a screaming, crying Veronica out of the restaurant. As the door closed behind her, several diners actually started clapping. I stood there in my wine-stained uniform, completely unable to process what had just happened. Christopher came back to where I was standing, and his eyes were kind. "Nicole, can we talk privately for a moment?" We went to Mr. Henderson's office, and I was still in complete shock. Christopher sat down and gestured for me to do the same. "I want to apologize for what my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, put you through tonight. There's no excuse for it. But I also want to thank you because watching how you handled that situation with grace and professionalism when you had every right to walk out taught me something important. It taught me what real strength looks like." He leaned forward, his hands clasped. "I'd like to offer you a position in our corporate office. Regional training manager. You'd be teaching new staff, developing customer service programs, visiting different locations. The pay is 3 times what you make now, full benefits, and there's a college fund program for employees' children that Brianna would qualify for." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. 3 times my salary, benefits, a college fund. "But that's not all," he continued. "You mentioned once that you wanted to start a catering business. I'd like to invest in that dream, help you get it off the ground. You have a gift for making people feel valued, Nicole. That's rarer than you think, and it's worth investing in." I started crying. Ugly crying, the kind where you can't breathe and your nose runs and you don't care. 3 years of barely surviving, of choosing between paying the electric bill or buying Brianna new shoes, of feeling invisible and worthless. It all came pouring out. Christopher handed me a box of tissues and waited patiently until I could speak. "Why?" I finally managed to ask. "Why would you do this for me?" He smiled, and it was genuine and warm. "Because how we treat people when we have power over them defines who we are. You treated people with dignity when you had every reason to be bitter. That's the kind of person I want leading my company. Plus, he added, I really do think your catering business is going to be amazing. I've tasted your recommendations enough times to know you have incredible instincts about food. That night changed my entire life. Within a month, I started my new position. I was terrified at first. Imposter syndrome hit hard. But Christopher was right. I was good at it. I understood what it meant to struggle, what it meant to be treated poorly, and I could teach others how to create a different culture. My catering business launched 6 months later, just on weekends at first. Brianna started at a better school. We moved to a nicer apartment. I could breathe for the first time in years. As for Veronica, the divorce was quick and brutal. Turns out she'd signed a prenup years ago that she'd forgotten about. Christopher was generous but not stupid. She had to get a job, a real job, for the first time in her adult life. I heard through the grapevine that she was working retail and absolutely hating every minute of it. I ran into her once, about a year later, at a grocery store. She looked tired, older, humbler. She saw me and her face went red with shame. For a second, I saw her struggling with whether to walk away or say something. Finally, she approached me and said, I'm sorry. For what I did to you, I was a terrible person. I looked at her, really looked at her. And you know what? I felt sorry for her. Thank you for saying that, I told her. I hope you're learning what it means to work hard. She nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked away. I never saw her again, but I heard she eventually turned her life around. Found some humility, started treating people better. Sometimes people need to lose everything to find their humanity. Christopher and I stayed friends. He's a good man who'd lost himself in a toxic marriage. He's happy now, dating someone who actually has a heart. And me, I'm thriving. My catering business is growing, Brianna is flourishing, and every day I wake up grateful for that terrible night at Romano's. So here's what I learned that night. How you treat people when you think nobody's watching. That's who you really are. And karma. She's always watching, honey. Always. If this story hit you in the feels, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me about a time you witnessed karma in action. And hey, if you believe in treating everyone with respect no matter what job they have, subscribe to this channel because I've got plenty more stories where this one came from. Remember, be kind to the people serving you, helping you, working for you. You never know who's watching, and you definitely never know who you might need tomorrow. Until next time, stay blessed and keep spreading kindness. Peace.